Take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free. Take me to the ocean, take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free.
Hello world, I'm Mhax. Back in IRL, I go by Curtis. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you to review episode 0 and its appended segments for terms, conditions, and disclosures applicable to the entirety of this content. Thank you. Well, hey everybody, good morning. It's, what are we at? April 6th, about 11 local. And so I made a capture the other day. I was going to make an episode and put it out, and it's all about courage and sort of fearlessness. And I'm a beginner YouTuber. I'm new at podcasting, and I effed it all up. I actually, I had this microphone in frame, and somehow when I turned on my camera, I set the focus to this microphone. So it's beautifully in focus of a microphone, and I'm all fuzzy as shit. So I'm not going to release that. I think it was a good show though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to append the audio, which was, because this is a nice microphone, it did a good job. I'm going to append it all to the end of this. And so as I woke up this week, I just felt kind of inspired by recent happenings in the world, and I find myself wanting to be a little bit brave I guess, it's sort of like calling bottoms of markets scary. And I go into great length on why and how I think about it. And I dig into a lot of the macro and all of it in this. It's about 45 minutes. So what I would encourage is please give it a listen. There's a bunch of really good stuff in there. If you've been following me so far through any of my macro content and crypto and geopolitics and just trying to read these very difficult to read tea leaves in this moment of just wild potential volatility. It's really good. And I just say, when you're going for your walk or you're doing something, when you're making dinner or something, put in the earbuds. That's what I do. And a lot of times I listen to audio only content. So I will transition to that shortly at the end. And there's some really good disclaimers. So as with all of my content, that disclaimer I put at the beginning is very important. All of this show is for me to capture what I authentically think. And that means I can't put up all the guardrails that, as I'm doing it, as I'm doing streaming consciousness and I'm trying to say from the heart authentically what I think about things. I can't stop every 2 seconds to say not financial advice and, remind everyone to be very responsible as they allocate as they invest, as they live their life. I am really just trying to transfer very accurately how I think about everything. So that disclaimer is important. And as I model behaviors right now, a lot of this subsequent audio, I'm being a bit brave, and with advising people I really love on making financial decisions. And so as you listen to any of the words I say, you have to take it through that lens. There are no guarantees for anything. I'm just simply doing the best I can, and I'm dedicating myself to trying to do it as well as I possibly can. So everything must be taken with a grain of salt. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to just research the hell out of everything and decide for yourself. how to play things. I really try and listen to everybody and synthesize the bull case and the bear case. It's really an important part of my process. And I think you have to take into account, you can't just take a snippet of what somebody says and say, oh, well, they said this, it's going to work. And so I'm really trying to ground a lot of my work in deep knowledge of who you're listening to. So before you would ever take any guidance, I would suggest, I think you have to hear me out start to finish. You have to hear my entire process and how it works. So, not financial advice. And you have to think of the person that's talking right now. So, funny thing happened to me. Yesterday I bought gas and fuel's back up. OPEC's cutting supply and all that, and we're in the state I'm in, we're creeping up around 450 again, and I drive a pickup, so I've got to fill the tank from empty. Yesterday cost me about what I last saw on the dial was about $89, I think, and it asked me if I wanted a receipt. I said no, and then I walked away. And then later, I got a notification on my phone that I was charged like $176 flat. Now, a lot of people would choose to let that information wreck their day. And they would get on the phone and they'd, I don't even know how that works. So I don't know whether it's just a mistake and it will correct, or whether what's going to happen is, or what happened is that somebody pulled in behind me, and the question that was up on the gas, the little terminal on the gas pump said, "Are you done?" And it said, "No, I'm not." And they said, "I would like to use that card too." That's possible. I kind of, the person you're listening to right now doesn't, I don't really get, the way, how I'm going to handle that situation. I'm going to be totally fucking cool with however it pans out. Either it corrects properly and it was just a mistake in the authorization request. I probably won't even look. If it turns out I bought a full tank of gas for somebody else, I'm going to choose to take that as the universe thought it was time for me to do some charitable works for my fellow man in a time where gas is very expensive. And that'll make me happy. So as I play the investing game and as I do this, that is the lens I view it through authentically. And so as you listen to me, you have to account for that. You have to account for who's talking and how they think. That's just really important. So I'm probably later today or tomorrow, sometime this week, I'm going to do another episode, and I'm going to shift gears again. I've spent a lot of time on monetary, macro. I spent a lot of time recently, just this last week, I talked to academia about theories of everything, and I really thought about sort of the one end of, I sort of divide, as I study how the universe works, I really see this sort of left brain, right brain, sort of dance happening between sort of higher order, what you would think of as more spiritual thought, and the extremely focused, all internal compute towards trying to structure and frame and define how something works. In sort of in a way where it's just very left brain. You have to go study. I would say spend a bunch of time studying Ian McGilchrist's work on The Matter with Things. He's got a whole pod series. There's 30 episodes of how the mind works, left versus right mind. And because if you've listened to any of my content, you know that I really think of us all as just being sort of in a giant mind. I'm just one little neuron, and so are you. And together we form a collective of thought. And I think there's sort of a left and right. There's a conscious and subconscious mind at play there. And I would also define like left versus right and conscious and subconscious. And I want to deep dive into that. I want to spend a bunch of time. I've spent all this time on sort of the left brain analytical, and I've hinted that I have a spiritual side. I have a deeply spiritual side to me. And I defined myself as sort of a staunch atheist agnostic until very recently, until about 41 years old, 42 years old. Funny that it should happen at 42. For you hitchhikers, guide fans out there. Everything has sort of fallen into place in my understanding, and I feel like I suddenly have a Rosetta Stone for accurately interpreting some of our most sacred texts and sort of looking right through it to the meme and the story native, the story and metaphor, and accurately interpreting what I think the author intended. I want to do a whole series on that. So State Copy Podcast is about to go full spiritual. We're about to go, we've done a whole bunch of time on yin, and I think it's time to shift to yang. And I think that'll be fun. And I feel like my intent always is to be sort of to find that bridge, that in harmony, that the S in the yin yang sign. I want to be that. And I describe myself as sort of a explainer, somebody who just enjoys studying everything and then trying to compress it down and explain it for people who care to listen to me. So I feel like that keeps me grounded in both yin and yang. And I feel like that gives me sort of superpowers for making it more relatable. As somebody who was, as I said, like sort of a staunch atheist and so close to that kind of thinking for so long, I have a good, like, I feel like I can talk to you. Like, I know how you think. I used to think like that. So this next series, I feel like I have to be so much careful. Like with the little disclaimer I did that took 5 minutes to do for academia, and investing in macro and all that, the not financial advice disclaimer I just did. For spirituality, it has to be so much more carefully crafted. There's a sacred aspect to it where you really have to respect everybody's path they found to it. And so when I talk about those things, I'm going to take great care to not step on how anybody else arrived at that sort of understanding. I think if you're like I was most of my life, there was a big hole in your heart. There was a big, you accepted this bullshit that this is all random and it just sort of happened. And on one level, it's too complicated for us to understand. So magic, but not God, not God. Don't say the G word, I don't accept that. I think there is a way it is appropriate to look at those things and try and make sense of them for yourself. And I will tell you, as somebody who is very confident he's done that for himself, your heart becomes whole. There's a piece of you that's missing. And you're wise to try to chase that and understand it. So I'm going to do a whole, probably several shows concurrently where I do something very similar to the end of the epilogue of my Hitchhiker's Guide episode. And I'll link that in here. Just a direct link to the section where I dig into a really complicated thing like Adam and Eve, and think of it as metaphor, and that somebody who was a lot smarter and wiser than me was trying to compress into like a meme that could be passed down telephone gang style, like I say in there, for thousands of years potentially, and then still arrive at my ear with a shot at my feeble mind being able to actually look through all the ignore the meme and listen to the story with an open mind and properly interpret it. I think that I can go through a whole bunch of those stories, and I'm going to look for help to help me with it. Like I want to not look through, like I'm familiar with sort of a Christianity, with Christian faith, because that's what my mother was. And she made me go to church when I was a kid. And I sat there going, well, this is ridiculous the whole time, because I couldn't see past the meme. I couldn't see past the metaphor. And it just sounded silly to me. What do you mean? There's two people out in the woods naked and they just sort of made all of us? And then suddenly it all went to shit because they decided to eat an apple, but it was the girl's fault. All of it is just fucking, it sounds ridiculous. We were right to feel that way in Christianity's case. But now that I kind of understand how to interpret that metaphor, I want to do that. I want to just like go through all these stories and really pick them apart with all of the cognitive complexity we have developed between then and now and kind of harmonize them. I think it'll be a really fun series, especially for those that are stuck in that place where you got a hole in your heart, like I was. This is really for you. It's not for, I'm not trying to convince the people who have already filled their hearts that they should adopt my understanding. I'm trying to build a bridge for the people that have convinced themselves there's nothing there. So that's what that'll be, and I'm excited to do it. I think it's important. Thank you so much for listening to anything I have to say. I think you're the coolest. Whenever I say that, I really fucking mean it. I will transition now to my 45-minute episode that almost wasn't, that will be audio only. And thank you. All right, everybody, time for a new show. Happy Tuesday to you. It's April 4th, about 1 local. Today we're going to try, well, we're going to shift back mostly to finance stuff and global macro, as I promised I would. So today we're going to try and be a bit fearless. That's how I'm feeling. I woke up today and, well, let me back up. Yesterday, I tweeted. I follow Professor Brian Keating. Professor Doctor. He tweeted, has anyone checked on Web3? And it's a GIF of a beautiful woman putting up a sign that says, you okay? And I responded, the pros are sleeping like a baby and scrambling for every free coin because this. I'm going to try and put this graph up in post-processing. I don't really like the way I was doing captures before where I did it in real time. So I'll try that. So hopefully here-ish, a graph will appear that maps out global liquidity cycle. And it goes clear back to, let me zoom in a bit. It goes back to 1968. And it shows this beautiful cyclicality between global risk on and risk off behaviors. And well, it's actually mapping like M2 money supply, I believe. Index 0 to, let's see, 65 months GLI. What this graph is attempting to communicate is there is a cyclicality to markets. There is a period where there's a lot of liquidity, and that is just the baseline money that's flushing through the system. And it's a really important part of the global economy is this sort of cyclicality. It's like waves. It's like a tide. The tide goes out, and we spending money. Or the tide, and then the tide comes in, and we decided we spent too much money. Things are getting irresponsible. So money is like, if you look at it mechanically, is like taken out of the system. And that creates, when liquidity goes down, prices for everything go down. Now, we just went through that. And I've described before in past podcasts that I spent a lot of time after 2017 becoming fairly expert in crypto. I think that if I looked in 1,000 square miles of where I'm sitting, I'm probably one of the most educated people you will find. It's not arrogance. It's just I did all the homework. I did all the time. And but what I didn't do, and the great mistake I made, is I focused entirely on crypto and growth, and I didn't pay attention to the bears and the cyclicality of markets and how there's this tidal flow to how it works. So in the down cycle, we'll call it basically November 2021 till today. Well, we'll call it January. I haven't been looking a lot at it recently. I decided I will become expert in everything else. Now that's a bold claim, but YouTube is extraordinary. Like I can't, like if you get thirsty for good knowledge and you build a nose for it, you it'll trump every 4-year degree, master's, all that shit's bullshit anymore anyways. ChatGPT, LLMs. If you just go do the work, you can get a powerful education in whatever subject you would like. It's all free. It's all out there. Like Will Hunting and Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon's character. How about them apples? Or not how about them apples? You're going to realize that if you just had a fucking library card, you could have just gone and got all the same education. And so I will tell you, it's all out there. Stop bothering to save money for your kid's 4-year degree. All you need to do is get them a $15 a month YouTube subscription and a thirst for knowledge. Anyways, in a year, I was able to grok this chart, which is global liquidity. And it shows how basically there's like a boom bust cycle where basically the global economy goes risk on and we flush money into the system and we say, go lend it out. Now, the whole thing works off this, right? Like small businesses, anything that wants to create jobs for us all to work at, we go through this boom bust cycle where we encourage small and mid-tier and large banks to lend money out to people who want to make businesses, who want to build startups. Everything is based on this. And so what this chart communicates, if you look at it carefully, is we were just in a down cycle. And this chart predicted it. I should have known. But I wasn't as educated in all of it. Now I am. So when I responded to Professor Keating, when I told him the pros are sleeping like a baby and scrambling for every free coin because this, so, and it's a link from that Cross Border Capital put up back on July 16th, 2022. Now this chart played out exactly as the rhythm predicted. And basically October was the down mark and now we're on an uptick. So when I started this show today, I said, it's time to get fearless. Now, last week I had a couple of my friends over and we got a bunch of good snacks and I bought some really good ribeye steaks. I pride myself in making the best steak also within 1,000 miles. And we sat out on the patio, which is beautiful where I am this time of year, and we just hung out. And I think we got through 2 joints, and at some point in a very stoned conversation, this stuff came up because we all follow this very carefully. Just markets in general. And we started talking about it. And one of my buddies asked me, what are you thinking today? You know, like kind of like how are you reading the tea leaves, like for recovery? So the upcycle. And because in the place I was in, now normally I don't get very stoned. I just take a small dose to stimulate creativity and productive wrangling of thought. But this was a rare opportunity to sit down with a couple people, and we went whole hog. And it took me to a place where I couldn't process it as carefully as I normally do. And I told him, could be 2 years for a recovery, just with knowledge of this chart. And I think that's wrong. I think what I'm doing is I'm being cautious. I'm being and I see everybody doing this out in the community, out in the crypto community, in the macro community. I see everybody, when I really try and analyze it through, like I do with everything, and I look at myself and why I say the things I say, I don't think it's going to take 2 years. I'll tell you exactly what I think it's going to do in a second. But I want to explore that emotion for a second. So when it comes to money, investing, and risk taking, it's so much of it's out of your control. You're just really trying to look at all the data as carefully. If you're good, you focus a lot of effort on trying to look at everything. And the macro people, what they optimize in is really trying to look at the things like cyclicality of markets and play a zoomed out higher level game where they're looking at all the broad strokes of markets, and then they're looking for, they're setting they have a risk portfolio that they're comfortable with and that is adjusted hopefully with some risk management, so they bet against themselves so they can never get busted out. It's just a very complicated process. But you are at best, you are really just you're making the best prediction you can with the data you have. Now, if you're a macro person and you're putting 40, 50 hours a week into this thing, this objective. And there were definitely periods of 2021 that were like that for me, where I was spending just hours devouring knowledge and listening to the smartest people in the world right now argue about what happened, what's happening, and what's about to happen. Now, in doing that, I feel like even if you start to get a good notion of what's about to happen, it's a really uncomfortable place to go out there and say, well, here's what I think is going to happen. And I see so many people hedging and being kind of afraid and a little nervous about that. And I understand that, because the last thing you want, if you're, is to drag a loved one, someone you really care about, into a bet and then have it go wrong. I mean, you really have nothing to gain, right? And I mean, I'll tell you why I would do it, why I will tell people what I honestly think is going to happen, is because I, in the last liquidity cycle, did pretty well. And I didn't like being there by myself. I really wanted all of my friends and family there with me. And now as I think about it and I study this chart, and we'll get back to global macro and where old fi is going to go this year. I want to circle back to that. But in new fi, markets are leading. Markets are their whole job is to make predictions and make bets before things happen. So when things are about to go south in markets, growth just gets walloped. Growth is the stuff that's going to make a shit ton of money tomorrow, but today doesn't make very much. And you have to have imagination, and you have to be forward looking, and you have to be able to be willing to take risk on something that isn't going to make money until tomorrow. Now, that means when there is one of these cyclical downturns, like you see perfectly charted here, what happened right on time in 2021, growth gets hit first, and it gets hit hard. And that's Tesla, that's NVIDIA and traditional markets, that's in old fi. And then in new fi, it's of course all of new fi. So all of crypto got hammered. And there's a lot of grave dancing that happens. Like there's a lot of people who missed the boat last time who want to go, nah, 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 nah. You know, told you, that was all bullshit. No, that's all bullshit. The people that spent all the time researching all this stuff, their fundamentals were right. What they just didn't see is there's a cyclicality to markets. Money flows in, then it washes out. And as it's flowing in at the blow off top, tourists come in and they make it go way higher than anybody thought possible. And they always get washed out first and they get crushed. And a lot of times, like I actually managed in the last time this happened to bring people along in the upswing. And most everybody I pointed at stuff did pretty well, and they smartly got out of it near the top. So they didn't get in at the beginning of the stuff I was looking at, but they got out higher along the top because my fundamentals game is what it is. I actually believe these things that I invested in are going to work and are an inevitable future. So I just wrote it out. I just said, I'll ride this downturn. How far could it go? Well, it went a lot farther than I thought it could go. That's okay. I'm a stoic. It's fine. It teaches me, but I use the downturn to fuel this thing for the next time. And now I have a whole strategy for recognizing a blow off top and getting out with most of profit maintained. And at some point, new fi is going to decouple from old fi. I'm not sure if it's this cycle. I give it kind of 50-50 because we're at a point where a lot of the picks and shovels are developed at a point they need to be, but not all the DeFi stuff. So I want to call out I will in a moment. Let me finish this thought. So there is a temptation to hold back, and it's twofold. It comes from a place in your heart where you don't want to see your loved ones get hurt because they pile into something that you tell them is going to go up, and then it goes flat or it goes down for a while or it goes down. They are not going to have the conviction you have because this stuff is incredibly fucking complicated. I mean, 6 years of staring at it. I don't claim to be knowledgeable in all things. This thing is so big. But there are a few things I know pretty well. And I feel like part of me, like I don't want to see anybody I care about get hurt, right? But at the same time, I don't want them to miss out either. And this is where bravery comes in and courage. Those are the same things. At some point, like I feel like I know some of the people out here who understand this. Like I follow them, and I was about to reference Raoul Paul. He spoke with Chris Berniski, I think is how you pronounce his name. The episode, I'll link it in the comments, is called How an Expert Values Crypto. Wonderful conversation, brilliant conversation. I have lots of respect for these two men. So these are, if you listen to that conversation start to finish, these are two dudes that get it. They understand sort of the cyclicality, the business cycle, where this is all going to go, how NuFi is inevitable. It's not up for debate. It's going to happen because they are expert in the old system and understand the mechanical issues that how the old monetary system was sort of doomed to failure from its onset in a lot of ways. You can go study, like I said, Ray Dalio's work on the rise and fall of empires and global reserve currencies, etc. These guys, like, are braver than most. They're going out on record and saying what they're doing. And there are other people I know that are in this space that are as sophisticated as these two gents that are much more reserved. And I feel like that was kind of like when my friends came over and I got stoned with them, I was sandbagging. I didn't want my, and that comes from a place where you're trying, but with this friend that I'm talking about, it wasn't, I don't want you to get hurt. It was pride a little bit, I think. And bad, if you look at my old content, I delineate between good pride and bad pride. And if I'm really honest with myself, I think it was like when I woke up this morning and I was looking at this tweet and I was seeing how it played out on Twitter, and I was thinking about where I am in my emotional state and my prediction game about all this stuff. I think it was bad pride that drove me to respond in that way last week. I didn't want to be wrong about calling the bottom of a market. I didn't want, I had a good friend that I'd worked with for years, and he's at least as sophisticated in his knowledge of this space as I am now. And I kind of was padding the numbers because I was like, it was, you don't want to say, oh, the bottom's in, it's straight to the moon from here, and then be wrong and have, but we're running out of FTX in crypto. We're running out of things like FTX that could go south. This regulatory thing that, Operation Choke Point 2 that's in all the crypto shows, it's not moving the needle. All the pain's been gone. The tourists are all gone. The only people left are the people that did all the homework and know it's the inevitable future. So it's like, where you see sell pressure now, it's basically, you've got people it's all the people I just described that are left that are like trying to pay their bills and they're building runway for themselves. I mean, 2022 was a really lean year for me. I basically stepped out of my day job to go full-time into this philosophy gig, podcasting, and just I finance it with investing. So last year had to be a lean year. It was it was the downturn of a massive blow off top. And I, like everybody, and I mean everybody, because even the bond market got hit this time, got crushed in 2022. And that changed a lot of my spending behaviors. That changed. I mean, like in 2021, I was just, if I saw a thing I wanted to do or a thing but I don't know. I live a pretty modest lifestyle. I don't really need or want big things. So, but if there was some little thing I needed for like podcasting or something like that, well, that was before. I wish I'd gotten into podcasting then, back when I had cash. I was living, but a thing I see myself doing like in the last month or two is I'm spending again, because I'm looking at this chart and I'm going, it's not going to be 2 years. Now, let me tell you what I think is going to happen. I think all the damage and growth is pretty much done. I think markets are forward looking, and they already priced everything down. There might be some more. There are some real painful hiccups I see in old fi coming. Those are the ones I mentioned around at least commercial lending and auto. I think there's a massive disruption wave coming from AI. I think things like ChatGPT-4 are going to if you listen carefully, I recommend anyone, if you want to just start, you need to go figure out where AI is and is going, and you need to understand its growth trajectory. And like Sam Altman was talking to Lex Fridman, that is a beautiful conversation. And after listening to Sam Altman for 3 hours, I have a lot more respect for OpenAI. Like in my last episode on Sunday, I was like, OpenAI, but they're not open. Well, they did open source like OpenAI Whisper. I mean, part of that's because it will generate a bunch of data, and we're running out of written words for them to feed into the models they're trying to build. But I digress. I think after listening to that conversation, I have a lot more respect for Sam Altman. I didn't really know him too well. And this is the beauty of long form podcast. If you listen to someone talk for 3 hours and you don't skip ahead and you're patient, it tells you so much. I mean, this is why I don't do edits in my podcasts. I'm trying to tell you who I am. So Sam Altman was asked by Lex at one point, like, where's the most disruption you see? And one of the first things that came to his mind was customer service. I agree. So one of my first jobs out of high school, like as I was going through college, I worked at this call center for a bank. And it's like banking customer support. And then I went into their online banking department. And then I was I was like their second tier tech support. I know that business. I was in a call center for 2 years. And yeah, ChatGPT-4 right now is scoring through multiple IQ tests around 114, and it learns in exponentials. Next year, it's going to be above 140 probably. It can definitely handle all of that old job I used to have. And we're going to have, if you look at AGI rendering of, basically people are taking Stable Diffusion and they're rendering out frames for video with Stable Diffusion. And I can't remember what Ahmad Mustak, I think is his name, from Stable Diffusion was. It's something ridiculous. Like they can Stable Diffusion now on a decent machine can crank out like 30 images or 60 images a second or some crazy thing like that. That's real time full motion rendering. And I think I would argue that the hardest thing to do is to learn how to draw the two-dimensional image with a prompt. Now we're just talking about, okay, draw it and render it moving as an animation. So next year, we're going to have something with a higher IQ than, 90, 95. Like I haven't looked at what the actual bell curve looks like these days. But there is going to be an automated free tool that any company, like if you are in a call center right now, you need to start learning some sort of other skill, because I think it's not it's not a silly or unlikely forecast. I'm not being a lot of times I'm overly optimistic in my timelines. Once I see something's going to become inevitable, I'm like, okay, something like that. But I'm getting better as I get older. And I think, next year, I think that for far cheaper than building and staffing a call center, a company is going to be able to just run an AGI model that will be available through any platform in real time, have a friendly face that's never having a bad day, that's far more competent than I ever was when I did that job. And it's going to be directly dialed into all the systems to where it knows instantly and is able to act on input and requests. Now, in some cases, you're going to need a human reviewer, probably definitely in like a banking sense for certain things. But a lot of it, I think, we just automated away. This is going to have really shocking impacts on things like index funds. So much of how people invest is they look at the past and they say, well, statistically, stock pickers got crushed, and if I just held an index, I would have been great. But whenever innovation disrupts markets, and then you compare a thing like Amazon or Google's chart to the S&P, you see, wow, no, you would have done way better if you'd had all your money in those companies and you were able to ride out the volatility of its growth cycle as it got proven out and adopted through like a network effect. So AGI is, or just AI, it doesn't even have to be artificial general intelligence, but just something that can answer questions in a customer servicey kind of way through a tablet or mobile device. That's here, especially audio. I mean, like if you want it to actually look like a person that is indiscernible from a real person, maybe that's a year away. But audio, no, we're there, man. we got that, and it's just going to take, a bit of time for that to propagate and for people to be able to offer that service. It's going to be this is going to be so disruptive to so many things. And where, your old-timey investors that are totally detached from this stuff, your Warren Buffetts and stuff, they're going to say, oh yeah, you go to growth right now in this cycle. This is different. This is not like all of the past. The game has changed overnight. And there's a bunch of zombies in these indexes. So, like, when my parents, I feel like my plan was always going to be just, I know I'll be good enough to where with what I'm doing, to where I don't need to worry about how I think they're, how crushed their entire net worth is about to become, because I just figured I'd carry them. They made me. I owe them everything. I will be glad to do that. But I don't think that's good enough. Like I want to tell them. So first of all, I woke up today and I looked at that tweet. And I looked into myself and I said, you're being a kind of a pussy about this, dude. Tell the people what you think. Let them do with it what they want. And I think it'd be great if people could ride along with me this time from the depths of the bear. Like I want that. I think that's awesome. Um, and I don't want my parents to have to live with the feeling of that that there's some kind of burden on me. You know what I mean? So here's what I think I'm going to do. At some point in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do an episode of the State Copy podcast with my parents. They're staying with me for a couple months. I'm going to ask them to do a show with me, and I'm going to set it all up, and I'm just going to say, hey, you guys, I won't publish this unless you guys watch it and you like it and you're proud of it. Good proud. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to record a show, and I want to set kind of a template for how to do this for people you care about, for people, the people I love in my life that I really want good for. You know what I mean? And I also think we're coming into a time where suddenly our technology opens up incredible new possibilities like age extension. And I think the approach I'm going to take is I'm going to sit down with them and I'm going to tell them, first of all, thank you for being incredible parents that I'm grateful for. And I think I'm going to point out a bunch of the stuff I think they did when they were my age that really impressed me, that just blew me away about how capable they were and how, that's a child's view of their parents. But still, to this day, it's still very impressive. My dad is a pilot, and he flew with me and my sister. We went to the beach, and I watched him land a Cessna 175 with his 2 kids in Manzanita, Oregon. And we had a crosswind that was so gusty. And at that point, I was getting my pilot's license. I was about 15 years old. And I was taking lessons, and I knew how difficult what my dad was doing was. In a small Cessna, you have to crab into the wind, and you have to and when it's gusty, and he's got his kids there with him, and I only flew pilot in command after I got my license twice. I took one of my good buddies from high school up, and I took my mom up once, and then I just basically never used it again. But I know how hard that thing was that he did. And I'll probably call that out, and I'll call out some remarkable things I saw my mother do. And then I'll say, remember when you were 45? Remember how just everything was firing. You were very dialed in. And think of how people in their 70s sounded to you at that time. Even the ones you most loved and respect that were a bit out of touch with new technology, how the winds were changing, all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to try and make a compelling case for them that I love them. I want them to come on a journey with me. And I'm going to ask them for, I don't know, 10, 15% of their retirement assets. And I'm going to just say, let me build you something that I think will do a lot better. I think right now they're kind of irresponsibly all cash, and I just know they're going to get crushed, especially okay. Now let me tell you what I think is going to happen. I think SVB, Signature Bank, and these other ones was a Bear Stearns moment. We're not done. I think that was the March. I've spoke about this before. There's a seasonal shortage of dollars in the euro dollar system in March and September. And if you look at 2008, you had, Bear Stearns or maybe I'm getting them backwards. I don't know. That was a few years ago. You had Bear Stearns in March-ish, and then we coasted through summer. And then when we hit that other, dollar shortage in the euro dollar system, while the tide was all the way out and you could see who was swimming naked, as the saying goes. Lehman, AIG. So I think something similar is going to happen this fall. I think what's going to happen is I think commercial lending. I think a bunch of people are going to come up for their lease renewals, and they're not going to renew their leases, because if you go look at these big office buildings, they're all empty right now. Everybody works at home. I mean, most. I mean, there's some people that have been able to get people back in the office, but for the most part, nobody does that anymore. And so you got all these big empty buildings, and they were on leases. And now when the leases are up, they're going to be like, okay, I used to charge me $8,000 a month for this space. I'm going to pay you $3 now, or we're going to just relocate. And then the person that owns that property is going to be like, well, I can't afford that. The person that owned that may actually be in debt that they financed while rates were low, but it might have been on just like a 3 to 5 year loan, and now rates are way high. So when they're forced to refinance, they're going to become entirely unprofitable. And so the landowner, who was basically had structured the whole thing so that they were able to make a profit off of the space being leased at a certain price, is now going to suddenly find themselves owing so much more because of where rates are. They're going to walk away. They're not going to have an option. So then the banks are going to have this stuff. And this isn't mine. This is after listening to hours of people much smarter than me describe this. And there is gobs of this content. I can't remember where exactly I'm pulling it from my recent memory banks, but all of this macro stuff I look at, this is where you get all of this great knowledge of what's about to happen. So all of these loans are going to suddenly be, the banks aren't going to hang on to the paper, right? They're going to be like, well, fire sell it, you know? And that's going to bring all of the property values down, and it's going to aggravate the situation. Well, most of the lending for commercial real estate comes from small banks, small and mid-tier banks, like half of it or something like that. And already they're in trouble because depositors are right now being incentivized to take all of their money out of those banks and take it over to money market accounts where they can make 4 or 5%. All the banks have been paying zero yields for like a while now. And while we're in a time of real inflation north of 10%. So you're just getting crushed if you're in cash. It's just everything else was getting crushed. Well, I think we're at a point where everything else is kind of bottomed, and now cash makes me a bit nervous. I think you need real assets of some kind. I think growth starts to look because markets are forward looking. I think a lot of people who've been sitting in cash waiting for this down cycle, I don't know how I can't tell you how I know, I just know because I listen to all these people talk. The winds are changing. People are starting to see, okay, it's time for me to grab this. This stuff has gotten cheap, and my cash is getting crushed. That's going to create demand, and that's going to drive things up. And then when these small and mid-tier banks start failing come fall time, or, it's very difficult to predict when exactly a prediction is going to occur. I just do the best I can with my knowledge of Eurodollar and all that. I think, I think sometime before end of year, it'll be September to December. I think you're going to get sort of a run on small banks. And now here's the rub. Like I was thinking about, now what money do I have in a small bank right now? Most of the money I have there is to pay the federal government for my taxes for last year. So I don't care if there's a run on the bank and they shut the doors and they shut off deposits. They're not going to shut off deposits to the IRS. That's why I didn't worry about it. And when I was talking about, with this opinion of how things are going to go, should I take my money out of my credit union and put it over? And I even opened an account. So what I'll do is I'll just move like my run rate, my petty cash that I used to live on. It's practically nothing. I'll move that to like Big Four, but I'm not worried about the money that I have for the IRS. Like I think this is going to take longer. Like I don't think it's going to happen before taxes are due this month. But I know that if it does, the central or the U.S. government will definitely still do their withdrawal. And what they'll do is, if the bank doesn't have it, they'll just pay it with FDIC money. So, with this coming, and with knowledge of the debt cycle, the fact that global debt to GDP is like 320%, with all of that knowledge, when I harmonize that all into a view of what's likely to happen soon, it tells me that money printer about to go burr again. So like I followed up on this comment on Twitter. I said, "Oh, why are you not responding, browser?" There we go. I said, after that first tweet, I replied further to myself. I said, "Follow the M2, Dr. Brian Keating. Finance is way easier than physics." Joy emoticon. At Raul GMI, that's Raul Paul, has a great summary here. And I linked that video with him and Chris. And I said, study up on the business cycle, ISM survey, and the total inevitability of extreme money printer go burr before end of year. Yeah, I think I suppose it could take longer, but I don't think so. So I already feel my spending habits changing. Like I feel myself going, okay. And if you listen to my playbook episode, I have some stuff that I've positioned myself in old fi, such that if things crash in the big markets, I can generate enough revenues to live off of. So yeah, I'm not real worried. This is all, in my view, going to work. And so it's time for me to get a little bit courageous. I need to tell the people that I love and care about, it's time to probably build yourself a little portfolio. And I don't know. You can go to that playbook episode if you're curious about how I play that after staring at it all this long. Yeah, I'll probably build my parents like a, I don't know, 50, 60% Solana, maybe like 10% Bitcoin, 10% render, 10% UX, like 20% render, I think. Maybe some ETH, but it'll have to be in an NFT if it's ETH. And yeah, you can listen to that playbook episode if you want my, all of my thinking on why I do my allocations that way. Look, there's no guarantees. And I offer up my perspective because I feel grateful for all the people who are courageous enough to do it for me. It's gutsy to put yourself out there like that. You just say, this is what I think is going to happen. You can all laugh at, I tell you one thing that you are all welcome to do is you can point your finger at me and laugh your asses off when I'm wrong and it doesn't work. That's fine. It won't hurt my feelings. Well, go a little easy on me. But I don't know, you guys, like, the sharks were in the water a year ago and they were swimming and they were right, like the Mark Coyotes of the world. I think that's his name. The perma bears, with his his Twitter picture is he's like he's like a Viking on a horse with some battle axe or a tomahawk or something like that, destroying but now there's a fever pitch around that these bears have right now, and it's just like they think they're just gonna, it never gets to end. Like this is a way, it's a pendulum. They got to win for a while. Markets are forward looking. I don't think they get to win much longer. And it's time for me to let people know in my life that I care about, because I want them to come with me on this ride. It's fun. Yeah, I think that's everything I had to say today. To anybody listening, I think you're the coolest. Thanks for joining me on this journey. And I will probably put another of these out later this week as I have more thoughts. Thank you.
Now it's coming around, you're feeling cut down and in the ground, and so we all come together. We making a sound, we sing. Look at all this love we found.